On October 9, 2025, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu exercised his constitutional powers under Section 175 of the 1999 Nigerian Constitution to grant clemency, full pardon, and posthumous pardons to a total of 175 individuals. These sweeping gestures included 82 inmates receiving outright clemency, often for good conduct or remorse, reductions in sentences for others, commutations of death sentence to life imprisonment, and posthumous honors for historical figures like Kensaro Riwa and the Ogoni Nine, convicted of murder in the 1995 environmental activism case, Herbert Macaulay, misappropriation of funds, and Major General Mamad Vasa, treason related to an alleged 1985 coup plot. The pardons spanned categories like drug trafficking 29%, illegal mining 24%, homicide or violent crime 14%, financial or white-collar offenses 17%, arms possession, human trafficking, and more. Drug-related offenses top at 40%, illegal mining at 34%, and violent or capital offenses at 14%. This move has ignited fierce debate in Nigeria, with many decrying it as a blatant miscarriage of justice, especially for those convicted of heinous, non-remorseful crimes like premeditated murder and arms trafficking. This move by the president is a license for impunity and elite favoritism, particularly amid Nigerians' spiraling insecurity, economic hardship, and eroding trust in our institutions. High-profile cases like Marian Sanders' pardon have amplified calls for reversal. We are going to look at 20 persons that were pardoned by the president who committed heinous crime, capital offense, but they were let loose and let go by the president. Number 1 in that list is Kevin Prosper Onara. He was a dreaded leader of a kidnapping and robbery gang that was implicated in the killing of many police and military officers, as well as some other victims. Kevin Onara masterminded the kidnap of Barrister Mike Ozokeme San on 24th August 2013 along Auchi Beni Road. He is also responsible for the following kidnap: a judge of the Edo State Judiciary, a top female official of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Dr. Chudi Nwiki, a former deputy governor of Anambra State, who was killed by Kevin while in captivity, several members of the NYC and security agent. He also masterminded various attacks against security personnel, carried out several armed robberies and kidnap operations in Delta, Edo, Rivers, and Anambra State. Onara maintained operational bases and detention camps in Warri and Kokori communities in Delta State, Ibokolo community in Benue State, Benin City in Edo State, and Aba in Abia State. It will also be recalled that on the 18th September 2013, Kevin issued a 60-day ultimatum to the federal government to release some of his boys who were arrested by the DSS, or he will wreak havoc on innocent Nigerian citizens. On 25th September 2013, a combined security team of the Nigerian Army and DSS operative arrested Kevin, a notorious terrorist, kidnap kingpin, and armed robber who has been on the wanted list of security agencies. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, but is among those that were granted pardon by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in his recent amnesty for some prisoners, and has walked home freely after spending 12 years imprisonment. Number 2 is Marian Sanders. Marian Sanders' story is one of love turned to tragedy and rage that ended in death. In November 2017, the 37-year-old woman, married to Biaminu Bello, son of a prominent PDP chieftain, confronted her husband over allegations of infidelity. What began as a heated argument at the Abuja home quickly spiraled out of control. In a fit of jealous fury, Marian reportedly attacked Biaminu, stabbing him multiple times with a kitchen knife. The autopsy later revealed over 70 wounds, including deep cuts to his genitals, suggesting a crime of passion driven by anger and betrayal. After the gruesome incident, Marian was arrested and charged with culpable homicide punishable by death. The case drew national attention, symbolizing the dark side of domestic violence and emotional instability. During the trial, she maintained her innocence, claiming the death was accidental, but the evidence told a different story. In January 2020, the Federal Capital Territory High Court found her guilty and sentenced her to death by hanging. Marian spent 6 years in Suleja prison, where she was said to have shown good behavior. Despite the brutality of the crime and the pain left behind, she was later granted a state pardon, reportedly due to pleas from her family, her conduct in prison, and consideration for her young child. Her release remained one of the most controversial acts of clemency in recent years, a reminder of how justice, emotion, and power often collide in Nigeria's legal system. Ex-Corporal Michael Bauer, now 72 years old, was convicted in 2005 for premeditated murder committed during a military operation in Kaduna. As a serving soldier, he had executed a civilian suspect extrajudicially, an act described by the court as a deliberate abuse of power and a gross violation of military ethics. Found guilty, he was sentenced to life imprisonment, marking one of the rare instances where a soldier was held accountable for on-duty killings. After spending 20 years behind bars, Bauer was granted a full pardon, reportedly due to his advanced age and the length of time served. However, his release has drawn criticism from human rights advocates who argue that it sends the wrong message, that state-sanctioned violence can eventually be forgiven, even when justice demands lasting accountability. Lina Kusum-Wesin, age 34, was sentenced to death in 2017 after being found guilty of culpable homicide in Lagos. The crime stemmed from a domestic dispute that escalated into violence, culminating in Lina fatally stabbing her partner in what investigators describe as a brutal and deliberate attack. The court ruled that her actions were premeditated and she was condemned to death by hanging. For 8 years, Lina remained on death row. It is reported that she showed signs of deep remorse and participated actively in rehabilitation programs. In a surprising turn, she was later granted full clemency, with government officials citing her repentance and improved conduct as reasons for her release. Yusuf Afolabi, age 36, was originally convicted in 2015 for manslaughter, following a deadly brawl inside Kirikiri prison that resulted in the death of another inmate. The case, initially charged as culpable homicide, was later downgraded after the court considered claims that the fight was not premeditated. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, marking a serious stain on his already troubled record. After spending several years in prison, Yusuf's sentence was reduced to 12 years, with authorities citing his remorse and commitment to vocational training while incarcerated. Ifeanyi Eze, age 33, was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2021 after being convicted of manslaughter in connection with a gang-related killing in Lagos. The incident, traced to a violent clash between rival cult groups, reflected a deep-rooted menace of cultism that continues to plague many Nigerian universities and urban communities. After 4 years behind bars, his sentence was reduced to 12 years, with prison authorities and state officials highlighting his rehabilitation progress and commitment to reform. However, the decision has drawn public criticism, as many fear that leniency in such cases could glorify organized violence and undermine efforts to combine the widespread of cultism among young Nigerians. Dahiru Abdullahi, age 46, was convicted in 2016 and sentenced to 21 years in prison for the illegal possession of 3 pistols in Kano State. His arrest came amid a surge in banditry and armed violence across northern Nigeria, where weapons like those he possessed often end up fueling kidnapping, cattle rustling, and rural terror attacks. After serving 10 years, Dahiru was granted clemency, despite lingering concerns about the security implication of his release. Authorities cited humanitarian grounds, but it is being argued that there was no evidence of de-radicalization or rehabilitation, warning that such leniency risks emboldening arms traffickers and undermines national efforts to curb the proliferation of small weapons in the region. Malam Ibrahim, age 59, was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2022 after being convicted of armed robbery and illegal possession of firearms in Kaduna State. His conviction followed a violent heist that left several civilians injured, highlighting the growing menace of highway banditry and other armed attacks in northern Nigeria. Despite the severity of his crimes, his sentence was later reduced to 10 years, with prison authorities citing good conduct and discipline during incarceration. The decision, however, has sparked public outrage as many view the early release of convicted armed robbers amid Nigeria's ongoing security crisis as reckless and dangerous, potentially undermining public safety and the rule of law. Ajaspa Benziga, age 69, was sentenced to 20 years in prison in 2015 for culpable homicide, stemming from a land dispute in Delta State that escalated into deadly communal violence. The court found that Benziga's action directly led to the death of a rival claimant, marking yet another instance of how land and boundary conflict in southern Nigeria can quickly turn fatal. After serving nearly a decade, his sentence was reduced to 12 years, with officials citing his advanced age and deteriorating health as reasons for leniency. However, critics argue that such decisions reflect Nigeria's troubling pardon culture, where elderly perpetrators of communal violence often escape full accountability, weakening deterrence and perpetuating cycles of revenge and lawlessness in rural communities. Ife Yusuf, age 37, was convicted in 2019 and sentenced to 7 years in prison for human trafficking after being found guilty of luring vulnerable women from Lagos into forced prostitution abroad. Operating from contacts linked to Kirikiri, she preyed on unemployed and desperate women, exploiting Nigeria's deep gender-based inequalities and economic hardship. After serving 6 years, she was granted a state pardon, reportedly for good behavior and rehabilitation efforts. However, the decision has drawn sharp criticism from women's rights groups who argue that freeing convicted traffickers only unbundles criminal network and further undermine justice in a country already struggling with low conviction rates for human trafficking and exploitation crimes. Abiodun Elemoro, age 43, was sentenced to life in prison in 2014 for cocaine importation and distribution in Lagos, a case tied to transnational drug syndicates operating across West Africa. His conviction marked a major win for Nigeria's anti-narcotic agencies, as drug trafficking has long been linked to organized crime and insurgent financing, including groups like Boko Haram. After spending 10 years in prison, Elemoro received a full presidential pardon, a move justified by officials on ground of rehabilitation and reintegration. However, the decision has sparked widespread criticism, as many see it as undermining Nigeria's anti-drug effort and rewarding criminal enterprise, especially given the drug trade devastating social and security impact across Nigeria. I'm going to end here for now. A second video is coming that will give you a list of hardened criminals that were pardoned by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.